There was an idea called the Ignite Initiative. The idea was to bring together a group of remarkable people, see if they could become something more, see if they could work together when we needed them to fight the battles we never could. You think you're the only superhero in the world? You've become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet.
Trapping all those fighting souls, but yet across the world I see you.
Any journey worth taking tends to begin with a single step. And for the teams that participated in the first ever Marvel Rivals Ignite Grand Finals LAN, that first step was Ignite Stage 2. Whether they were extended an invite following a playoff performance in Stage 1, or qualifying via the Season 2 MRC, or even the Ignite Open qualifiers, there were numerous avenues teams could take to reach the next step in their journey. Regardless of how they reached Stage 2, 64 teams from across 5 different regions climbed the stairs towards the Stage of Immortals. For those that found success among their regional peers, dreams of playing on the biggest stage in Rivals history were just beginning to take shape. But for some, those dreams would quickly become nightmares. Sentinels, the Ignite Stage 1 champions and a team that dominated the game in the Americas region through much of last year, found themselves in a lower early bracket run in the Stage 2 playoffs and were eventually denied their LAN invite by Dark Zero. In the EMEA region, unsigned teams such as Chopped, FaZe, and Insomnia won over the hearts of viewers everywhere. Chopped assumed the mantle of the underdog heroes as they took on defending world champs Navi in the lower bracket semifinals in a battle for the last EMEA LAN invite. Though they fought valiantly, valor alone isn't enough to triumph over execution, and Navi delivered them a coup de grace to eliminate them from the tournament and secure their second LAN invitation. The Asia region became more competitive than ever during Stage 2, with Crazy Raccoon blazing a path of destruction through the playoffs' lower bracket. Though originally sent down by their rivals in Gen G, Crazy Raccoon would battle back and eliminate Gen G in the lower bracket finals with an incredibly decisive 3-0 victory, denying Gen G a second LAN invite. Asia Stage 1 champs Reject would push them to their limits in the finals, but in a 4-3 barn burner, Crazy Raccoon would stand tall as the new strongest team coming out of the Asia region. And in Oceania, after parting ways with their former org Ground Zero, the core of the original roster would invite players formerly of Chinese org Nova Esports to join in the formation of a new team, Chopper Mag. Chopper Mag would go on to terrorize the entirety of Oceania in the playoffs, winning the stage by defeating Ground Zero's new roster in a 3-0 domination, and also without dropping a single map throughout the entirety of the split. These tales of larger-than-life heroes overcoming the odds and ascending to the thrones of their respective regions were compelling. Over the next few weeks, 52 of those squads fell, their dreams cut short and hearts broken, leaving just the top 12 who earned their place to compete at Grand Finals. There were still more mountains to move, more steps to climb, and more rivals to defeat, but they had seen some success, and their journey has led them here, to the heart of the big city, in Atlanta, Georgia, to DreamHack. At the mid-season finals LAN in Guangzhou, China, America's Team Envy emerged as one of the powerhouses of the tournament. They flawlessly survived the play-in stage of that tournament and went on to defeat several big names: Citadel, Rad, 100 Thieves. Though they seemed poised to win the entire tournament, they would face off with a reinvigorated Rad Esports, now Navi, in the finals, and would fall just short of a glorious victory, dropping the series 2-4. But they looked nearly unstoppable and were commended for such an insane run throughout the MSF. Coming into the group stage of the Grand Finals LAN, expectations surrounding this team were sky high. Many fans placed them at the very top of their predictions and tier lists, preparing for a potential NA victory in the game's first ever Grand Finals tournament. They played well in Stage 2, having completed the group stage 4-2 and only losing to 100 Thieves in the playoffs. The thought was that if they could overcome the Thieves, then there was a decent chance that they'd be crowned the champions. Not to mention the fact that Navi were reportedly scrimming at an alarming 12% win rate. On the first day of the Grand Finals group stage, Envy were slated for 2 matches. One against Asia Stage 2 runners-up Reject, and one against China Stage 2 runners-up Iconics. Sentiments online were that these were merely the appetizers for the buffet that Envy would be served up, easy wins that would just get their appetite going. But in their first match with Reject, something went wrong.
Oh no, that was so unfortunate here. Could not really jump out of that while the game had just started in that moment, but it benefits Reject in the end, down to the seconds that it mattered. They had torn up Envy's backline and wasted so much time away from them, and were able to take map number 1 in our best of 3.
Reject pushed them all the way to point 3 on Hell's Heaven during the opener, and managed to fend them off to win the first map of the series. Undoubtedly an eyebrow raiser, but this was just the first map of this best of 3. A 2-map reverse sweep is far from the worst situation Envy has ever been put in. Envy chose Central Park as the counterpick for map 2 of this series, the location where they'd battle back and turn things around. But
they were ready to punish Window out of the Eye of Agamotto, and Reject right now are holding back Envy, and they need this dub to beat one of the best teams from America as Finale gets the back-to-back pick. Dolby follows up on tap, and nobody left from Envy to stay contested on the point, while Reject win game number 2.
And just like that, Reject had won their second match of the day after defeating Iconics earlier, and had delivered Envy an 0-1 start in the group stage. A surprise coming from one of the deadliest teams in the Americas region, but Asia had certainly stepped their game up since Stage 1. No need to press the panic button quite yet, as Reject were an extremely competitive team in a region that was starting to make some headway on the others. This could easily be brushed off as a fluke, especially as they went on to dominate Iconics in their second match of the day, not even allowing the Chinese squad to score a single point. Having quelled some fears of a potential blow-up at Grand Finals, Envy entered Day 2 ready for an America versus America matchup, as they were tasked with facing Dark Zero for their third match of the group stage. DZ opened strong on Hell's Heaven here, though Envy did force them to play out all 3 points before narrowly dropping the map. But again, Dark Zero were a team that had drastically improved since their Ignite debut, and it wasn't entirely shocking to see them take at least 1 map from Envy. They'd battle back on Central Park, a close win to be sure, but one that would have Envy even the score with their American counterparts. But Envy would struggle yet again as the battle reached Spider Islands for map 3. They fought tooth and nail to score checkpoint 1, and would eventually run out of steam around the halfway point to checkpoint 2. That left the door to victory wide open for Dark Zero, and with more than 2 minutes on the clock, they'd walk right on through. Envy falls to 1-2 overall, and into the danger zone. On the dawn of Day 3 of the group stage, things were dire for Envy. They had fought so hard, come so far, and now they were staring down the real possibility of missing the playoff cutoff. They had 2 matches on the docket for the final day of group stage, both must win for this squad. They'd be taking on the OCE Stage 2 champs in Chopper Mag first, and then they'd have to do battle with the EMEA Stage 2 champs Virtus Pro. It was a tall order for any team to try and live up to, but if there was one squad that had the wherewithal to rise to the occasion, it was Envy. The match against Chopper Mag was an easy open and shut game for Envy. At least it appeared that way on paper. Most didn't consider Oceania, let alone Chopper Mag, to be much of a threat to a team like them. Many teams didn't even bother to scrim Chopper Mag, a decision that might prove fatal later on. But Envy didn't need a scrim for this match. They were the MSF runners-up, a team always in the conversation about who the best team in the world is. And as their series against Chopper Mag kicked off, it seemed as though the prophecy would be fulfilled. We started off on Celestial Husk, and Envy delivered Chopper Mag a thrashing, walking away from the first map with an unscathed 2-0 victory. This was expected, and exactly what Envy needed to get them back in contention. The ship was righted, and things were looking up for the NA powerhouse. But on Midtown, things suddenly turned into a dog's breakfast.
Yeah, so the Butterflies comes on through alongside Beast of the Abyss. Cal gets taken down. Envy still have players up, but they don't have ultimates to be able to actually have the damage to buy the eliminations. Bobo gets the second. Monfizz down. It's just Rocket healing, and that alone is not going to be enough. And it's all up to a huge clutch coming on through from Chopper Mag in the overtime.
1-1. backs against the wall. A must-win match headed for Central Park as the pressure mounted, a powder keg ready to burst. It took some time to get things going on offense, but with a few seconds remaining, Envy secured a lifeline. A 2:30 time refresh as the payload finally came online. They battled their way to the second checkpoint, but were stopped several meters short of completing the map. And that meant...
Have the health reset, but it's not enough. Dance off the bullet place, but so too has Bobo. Una Reverse got cast, and Envy cast out of the tournament.
They fall to 1-3 overall. The MSF runners-up, the Stage 2 runners-up, fate's now sealed. They've spent a great deal of time as the bridesmaid, but even now, this still wasn't their wedding. They'd go on to be bested by Virtus Pro in one last 2-0 defeat, leaving them with a record of 1-4 overall and a total map score of 4-8. Every single team that defeated them would advance to the playoffs. Virtus Pro, Dark Zero, Reject, and Chopper Mag. The top 4 teams from each group in the group stage advanced to the playoffs, meaning they were now locked into playing on the game's biggest stage yet in front of its first ever public live audience. This was the sort of pressure that could crumble even the most hardened of esports veterans, but also the type of pressure that turns ordinary stone into brilliant diamond. Of all the teams stepping onto this timeless stage, perhaps none were underrated more than the lone representative of the Oceania region, Chopper Mag. They were facing a rogues gallery of Goliaths. 100 Thieves, Citadel, Virtus Pro, Navi, FlyQuest. Calling them out of place would be the understatement of the century. Chopper Mag were the only unsigned team to have made it this far into the tournament. In fact, they were seen as such a non-threat that according to their players, only Citadel and Navi were willing to scrim them. Most didn't bother, seeing OCE as nothing more than a bump in the road. Even after defeating Envy in the group stage, it seemed there wasn't a ton of buzz surrounding this team heading into playoffs. But Chopper Mag were no slouches. They had combined some of the strongest players in the OCE region with one of the stars of Marvel Rivals in China, Bobo, formerly of Nova Esports. They just had to prove themselves. They were matched up against EMEA Stage 1 champion Citadel in the first round of playoffs, a match that many felt would be a simple victory for the Citadel Giant. But as they loaded into Krakoa, the crowd was in for a bit of a shock.
Sapoli trying to survive to keep stalling as much as he possibly can. He's actually doing terrifically, but it's down to the wire. But they lose Duef in the process. Zenstar looking for a chance to dive. He's going to have the Vanguard counterpart back in a second with the BRB. He finds himself too. Enzo's trading onto Fidel, so it is just Skittles alive to work with. They could go down 0-2 on this domination map.
They're delaying as best as they can. Polly charges up to the point with the Liberty Rush. Kane is portaling in. They've had to swap it, but overtime ticks down. They can't reach, and Chopper Mag take the lead in the series.
Chopper Mag's first map win of playoffs, and they took it from Citadel of all teams? Maybe they hadn't been looking as dominant as they have in the past, but this team still has the likes of Melio, Tanuki, Polly. How could this be happening? The rest of the series would prove challenging for Chopper Mag, but not exactly a walk in the park for Citadel either. CTG would go on to win Heart of Heaven, but Chopper Mag managed to hold them to just a single checkpoint. Their defense would struggle on Midtown, with Citadel clearing the map, and they'd ultimately face defeat at the hands of CTG in a 1-2 series. Chopper Mag had been knocked into the lower bracket, and their first obstacle was none other than a rematch with Dark Zero. For the Oceania squad, this felt like a crossroads. Lose here, and their tournament run would be over. Dark Zero, however, was on another level. Since Stage 1, they'd sharpened their blade, bolstered by the explosive additions of former Sentinel stars Rymazing and Kurova. And let's not forget, DZ had already beaten Chopper Mag once in this very tournament on the first day of the group stage. To most fans watching, this match was a foregone conclusion. Surely, this time, Chopper Mag would finally stay down.
Yeah, great countermeasures coming through there, staggering out the KO onto Impunity as well. Speedy past the OT timer, and just like that, it's the first round to Chopper Mag.
The first to go out in the next fight here, but with some help from Skittles to get the BRB, and Bobo, it's a feast here as he sees everybody grouped up together. I have what cannot hear.
Nicely done, Madara is down, and the OT timer over and out. Chopper Mag, take away map number 1.
Chopper Mag came into this match looking to make a statement, and a 2-0 win on Burnin' T'Challa was certainly a good opening line. Their draft was sound, execution deadly, and they shared a camaraderie that most other teams could only dream of. Bobo's Psylocke was emerging as a truly lethal weapon, but that's not to overlook the other members of the team. Skittles and Fidel had them topped off around every corner, Duep and Zinstari were bracing themselves in the front line of every fight, and Pethic was rocking Daredevil with a precision we'd hardly seen from the Man Without Fear up to now. But the job wasn't done yet.
But they're still fighting, still shooting their way through. Amazing, in deep trouble there. But there you go, Chopper Mag, hold it down.
Dark Zero certainly went after Bobo's hero pool, banning out both Psylocke and Star-Lord, and DZ presented the team plenty of challenges on the battlefield, but none were enough to slow Chopper Mag's roll here. It would take a miracle hold just short of Checkpoint 2 and a subsequent miracle push under overtime, but Chopper Mag would advance to match point here and suddenly drew all eyes onto them. A tournament like this weaves an infinite number of stories and rivalries, but this was something special. But the job was still not done yet, with all lower bracket matches being best of 5s. Chopper Mag had come a long way, both in terms of travel and of gameplay. But they'd have to face their destiny, put their tournament life on the line as we headed for the nexus point of the Marvel Universe, Midtown, New York. They'd overcome so much, but they'd have to call down one last miracle to help bring them over the edge.
Together, as Skittles is going to combine that with the team of Chopper Mag, Nom Nom away, as they find velocity, they find Amazing. Good luck.
Looking good for them and getting a ton of KOs while they do it. Stalling their way through into the OT timer there. Insurance policy online, but the dance of the Cutterfly is online once again. Velocity down and more to follow. Barber!
The Chopper Mag, they're looking at that prize pool and they're looking to stay in the tournament.
Despite the odds and facing teams that were supposedly leagues ahead of them, Chopper Mag had done it. Not only had they battled their way onto the big stage in playoffs, but they had just sent home Dark Zero, a team that was never predicted to lose this game. A true star had emerged here, one that first shone all the way back at mid-season finals, but just needed a little bit more time to polish his sheen.
Yesterday is my birthday. I have 26, and nobody know me before this game. I have a job, and nobody know who I am. Now, everybody know us. We are Chopper Mag.
Remember his name. Advancing to the lower bracket quarterfinals, they'd be facing off against undoubtedly their greatest challenge yet, and one of the only teams to scrim them ahead of this tournament.
Hailing from EMEA, it's Na'Vi!
In a game packed full of fierce rivalries, explosive battles, and heart-pounding stakes, this match was something different. Na'Vi have always been a team that shows their opponents great respect, and it seemed as though they may have been the only ones to know that Chopper Mag were set to defy all expectations.
Do you have a little bit of sympathy after the interview with Bobo yesterday? I know that he said that you guys at Citadel are some of the only teams that did scrim Chopper Mag.
They're all boys. We love them.
But you're still going to beat them?
Of course.
Though Chopper Mag had begun to form a legacy in their victory over Dark Zero, the reigning world champions Na'Vi came to do business. Despite the respect they had for Chopper Mag, they were still bound by competition for yet another world title, and they would not let anyone stand in their way. Not even Bobo, not even Chopper Mag.
Trying to collapse on this squad of Chopper Mag. They don't have a portal, I believe they used it earlier, so everybody's kind of coming in desperation at the moment out of them. Only come back, but with overhelp, Bobo's portal isn't this, they don't have it. They used it earlier, and it's gonna get kicked down, and Chopper Mag do touch last second, Fidel is there, but it's over.
As they're walking from Zenstari goes down, and again, Naga looking so good. Pethic's gotta get this portal here quickly.
He has to, they're waiting till you pop the cocoon, but it might be too late, and it is. Bobo and crew, Chopper Mag have been eliminated.
Heartbreak. A team that had captured the hearts and minds of Rivals fans the world over, and they were finally cut down here in the lower bracket quarterfinals. Chopper Mag would ultimately fall into the 5th to 6th place bracket, but they'd outlasted so many teams predicted to run circles around them. They made it out of the group stage and outlasted the likes of teams like Crazy Raccoon and even Envy. They'd even survived a full round in the playoffs, extending their run past Reject and Dark Zero. Their road through grand finals may have ended here, but Chopper Mag's story is far from over. With Navi defeating Chopper Mag and 100 Thieves eliminating Citadel in the other lower quarterfinals match, 64 teams had been squarely cut to just 4. And now, with the summit of the international throne in sight, this was no longer just a friendly rivalry or an intense battle. This was all-out war. Hundred Thieves had a particularly challenging journey through this playoff bracket. They had to play the opening match of the tournament against EMEA superpower Virtus Pro, an intensely competitive series that would end in a 2-1 victory for VP. The Thieves would take down Reject in a no-problem 3-0, then fight for their tournament lives against Citadel, a match that would end in a 3-2 victory for 100T, sending Citadel packing. But that victory only sent them on a collision course with the defending champs Navi, who were hot off their 3-0 win over Chopper Mag. Navi had fallen victim to Virtus Pro in the upper bracket, so they were gunning for a chance at redemption. In fact, VP had blasted through the entire upper bracket and had already cemented themselves a spot in the finals. Now, it was a race to secure a ticket out of the lower bracket side. On the closing match of Day 2, they would face 100 Thieves. A tough challenge for the Thieves, considering Navi had already swept them 2-0 in the group stage. Though by now, we'd learned this tournament thrived on defying expectations, and the home crowd was roaring behind 100 Thieves every step of the way. But let's not forget, Navi are the reigning world champions, the first ever crowned in Marvel Rivals history. They weren't about to let anyone snatch a shot at another title, especially not a team from the Americas. No, this was shaping up to be yet another NA versus EMEA showdown. Navi's opening swing was a brutal one. A shutout win on Burnin' T'Challa to kick things off. 100 Thieves did not look their strongest in this tournament, having emerged from the group stage with a 2-3 record. Despite being the America's Stage 2 champions, their middling performance had many pegging them as the region's number 2 seed heading into grand finals. Still, early in the playoff bracket, they managed to take a map off the undefeated Virtus Pro, the only team to do so up to this point. Somewhere in the Thieves lineup lurked a threat to Navi's tournament run. They just had to find a way to draw it out. But
Rajaro is behind. TTK gets tackled. Naga again onto Terra is playing obscene. Make it a quadra here from Naga.
Naga's been insane, like you said. The stalls coming out of it. With the piece of the base, torches the payload. Same thing with Delena, but nobody else is here. Jerky finds him again on Spider-Man of all things, looking like Necros out here. Crook takes down Vinny, Millennia falls, and Navi, just like we saw in the last series versus Chopper Mag, go up 2-0 and put themselves on map point.
Danger. Already 2 maps behind, Navi just needed one more to send the Thieves over the edge of the cliff. They had to do something, and fast. Symbiotic Surface was counterpicked for the next map, and Thieves were looking to just try and get themselves on the board, just one map to get the ball rolling. And
Portal comes through. Team is together. Alt advantage here for Navi as Jerky now is on that Jeff with a huge Jeff potential. Trust me, goes under. It's huge. Terra, though, finds one early as they are up numbers once more. 5-6. Make it 4-6 as Terra takes out Fate. There's that itch Jeff, though, from Jerky. Is it huge? Terra on a level 1 Crook does not find anything there from Jerky, who is low and down. Terra is insane right now, and they will stop Navi.
Still alive. 100 Thieves were still alive. It was a close game to be sure, but all that mattered was the win here in the end. They'd finally shown some signs of life in this series, finally started to unmask the true threat this team was. Navi selected Hall of Djalia for the 4th map, one that Thieves have seen mixed success on in the past. Both teams fully cleared the map in the first go-round, signs that the battle was far from over. They went on to extra rounds, going the distance, fighting for checkpoint after checkpoint, with the Thieves putting 5 points on the board overall. Surely the gauntlet was thrown far enough to get us to a map 5. And yet.
Trying to find an early pick here onto the Sia. The combination comes through as Harvey now is trying to escape, but does compete. That is massive. Jerky onto Millennia. The numbers are falling. Navi clutching up with that Sia will end this and win.
The Americas were in trouble. Another hopeful had fallen, and at the hands of EMEA. First Envy cut down in the group stage. Then Dark Zero stopped by Chopper Mag. And now 100 Thieves taken out by the defending world champions Navi. With the Thieves gone, only one envoy remained to carry the Americas banner. America had been denied the throne by Rad, now Navi, back at the mid-season finals. Coming into this tournament with 4 representatives and the event hosted in Atlanta, Georgia, many thought it was NA's moment to shine. But Navi fancied themselves the Reaper, and now they were knocking on the door of the last remaining NA team, FlyQuest. FlyQuest had missed out on the mid-season LAN after failing to qualify, and ever since then they've been grinding and steadily improving. They made the grand finals cut after a decisive 5-0 run through the group stage, and they were no longer just hopefuls, but dangerous contenders. And their path through the playoffs was brutal. FlyQuest crushed the NA Civil War against Dark Zero with a 2-0 sweep, and sent Citadel Gaming to the lower bracket with another 2-0 victory. Their first real roadblock came in the upper bracket finals, where Virtus.pro handed them an 0-3 defeat. That first shot at the grand finals was gone, and now they would have to overcome Navi to keep America's hopes alive.
Who's gonna win the Marvel Rivals Ignite Grand Finals? It's FlyQuest!
We dropped into Krakoa for the opening salvo of this lower bracket finals, with the crowd in Atlanta at FlyQuest's back. Navi banned out multiple strategists heading into this first map, but FlyQuest opened strong with early engagements and teamfight wins. But just as quickly as FlyQuest found a leg up, Navi were there to cut them back down to size, and they'd go on to completely dominate the second point.
But we've got Fate of Both Worlds from Navi's end, damage boosting the Ensong Inferno, and Cooper through the ultimate falls. FlyQuest now relying on Sparksheep in overtime. The Heaven's Retribution not going to be able to pick up the stall that it looks for. Energy's onto the Doctor Strange, but Vicky, I don't think there's enough time.
FlyQuest's Energy put in an absolutely insane amount of work this tournament, and though he wasn't the only member of his team stacking clips, their efforts just weren't quite enough to find a hole in Navi's armor. FlyQuest would counterpick onto Midtown, and it was clear at this point that they were slowly getting the download on their EMEA rivals. They managed to stop Navi just short of clearing the map, leaving the door to a map 2 victory wide open. But
As he can try to find FlyQuest, he uses it right on top of the portal. Both teams, both dances the butterflies. They are having a waltz, but it is Jerky who dances on top as Navi put themselves at match point.
by this point, taking into account their series against Virtus.pro earlier that day, FlyQuest had now lost 5 maps in a row. The raging ocean of EMEA's might was beginning to swallow them. Beatdown after beatdown, defeat after defeat, and FlyQuest were wavering here. The mental game is always huge in Rivals, but here, under the bright lights and the scrutiny of the live audience, FlyQuest were nearly ready to crack. Nearly.
FlyQuest had to find these numbers, these eliminations so quickly back to back to back, and Kraken Impact is one of the best ultimates to be able to do it. As you can see, the moment where they understand, we won, we did it, we continue in this tournament, we have another chance to go again. Give them your energy, give them your cheers, your support. They appreciate it so much. For FlyQuest, for some of them, this is their first ever international LAN. The headsets are off, they will hear you in full. Let's hear it for FlyQuest!
Hanging on by a thread and riding a massive emotional wave, FlyQuest were still alive. The crowd was going wild, tensions were higher than ever before, and America's last bastion just put a crack in the EMEA armor. The energy was electric, the momentum was shifting, and the fans were ready for a brawl back into contention for FlyQuest. But Navi would not yield.
Serpentine sticking move, and well, FlyQuest aren't going to be able to move out of the way of that one. Through the fight, FlyQuest weren't able to find the eliminations.
And with Cooper coming back on the Doctor Strange, is it enough time with overtime? Sparksheep, he's trying to keep the dream alive. The stall as the portal needs to come out, but is it too little, too late? It is by a second. Navi, they take the loser's final match and they move on to the grand finals.
Heartbreak. Absolute heartbreak. Just when it seemed like FlyQuest were poised for the comeback of a lifetime, they were sliced down. They'd ultimately fall 0-2 on the final map of Hell's Heaven, drawing their playoff run to a close and calling down the curtain on the NA region in this tournament. In fact, this match sealed the fate of all other regions, as the final 2 teams remaining were both from EMEA. 64 had just become 2, and for both Navi and Virtus Pro, the job still wasn't finished. 100 Thieves, FlyQuest, Navi. All competitive teams to be sure, showing just how close some of these competitors truly are in terms of skill. They'd shown us potential we thought not possible. Though it may have stung in the moment, there is nothing for FlyQuest to be ashamed of at the end of the day. These teams are all some of the greatest in the entire world, leagues ahead of the average ranked climber. Sure, these teams were all unfathomably strong, but in reality, they were all playing in someone else's rearview mirror. By the final match of this Grand Finals tournament, there was hardly a team that Virtus Pro hadn't defeated along the way. Dark Zero, Reject, Chopper Mag, Iconics, Envy, 100 Thieves, FlyQuest, and even their opponents in those finals, Navi. All had fallen victim to the groundswell of pure execution that VP had become over the course of this tournament. But Navi were the only ones that managed to recover after facing the Bears, the lone team that stood atop the fallen forms of their rivals. For Virtus Pro, a mere 4 more maps were all that stood between them and redemption. This team had been one of the most dominant in the EMEA region, and perhaps the entire world, but had been made to bleed once before, when they fell in surprising fashion during Ignite Stage 1. It was the one blemish on a nearly perfect competitive record in their first season of competition, and this team was hungry to right the wrongs here. But the stakes were high for Navi as well. The team formerly known as Rad Esports had ascended to the throne of immortals in Guangzhou, having captured the game's very first international crown for themselves in surprising fashion. The lone team that had given them trouble during the MSF, Envy, was long gone, having departed Atlanta early after being eliminated in groups. But could they recover in time? They had done it once before, having been beaten by Envy early in the MSF bracket and coming back to win in the end. On one side, a legacy in the making. A vicious team hungry to prove to the world that their defeat back in Stage 1 was simply a fluke. On the other, the game's first legend. Heroes that found the strength and determination to be the first to ascend to the peak. Heavy is the crown, but Navi sought to pack on the pounds here with a potential win over Virtus Pro. But VP saw that crown as their own and would stop at nothing to earn it. Ignite the battle.
Using that passive earlier, if he falls, he's going to be able to fight. Removing that res, and VP close out on the rest of Navi, setting him to spawn.
From downtown, out goes the legend as Vinci cleans up one onto Naga. Down goes Fate from Sparker as they're still walking.
Sparker need to rewind, maybe a portal or something, but good throw. And this heat that you called that earlier takes 2 off the map. He swam to the edge.
Bubble gets pulled out, cooldowns are gone, but they do clean up to take a 2-piece, make it 3-1 as Nevix and Sparker get 2 apiece. Crook goes down, and that will do it for 3 consecutive maps.
In the blink of an eye, the defending world champions were losing their grip. The championship began slipping through their fingers, and they couldn't find the answers to stop it. VP went for the throat in every single draft, banning Jeff away from Navi's fate and stopping the Symbiote Shenanigans team-up. VP were finding value in every single team fight with every single ult activation, and even when Navi found some picks for themselves, VP would, at the very least, find a way to even the trade instead. Were they truly unbeatable? Could anyone find a way to land a clean blow on these immortals? Enter Crisis. Naga encouraged his teammates to go along with a last-minute swap. They were clinging to their final tournament life here, and with nothing left to lose, the team agreed. Bound and determined to make that fiction, Crisis entered the arena armed and dangerous.
And this is so hard for Crisis to come in cold, but no, he is not. I mean, Gridger will get shut down. That's 2 in the fight for Crisis, and on the point, they're here. He gets the reset in the side bay. Inside Inferno comes in, but he comes back down to shut down Finzi, taking a 4K.
Crisis now on a Finzi. Can they turn this again? That's a 2-piece. Do I see a reset? I do. Crisis back to back. Understanding a full distance commitment comes through from Crisis. Well, this one land does. Do I see 2 Crisis? Yes, I do. Built different here with his Kraken impact.
Battling back from the brink of destruction, Crisis helped finally put the team on the map here. The crowd came alive, clamoring for this series to keep going, with VP doing everything they could to call it an early night. Navi even locked in a Winter Soldier save to keep the pressure on. And though Midtown will be far from a walk in the park,
can they get there for the touch? It is looking like they're forced to commitment. And after missing mid-season, the Bear has awoken from hibernation. Every battle, every heartbeat, every moment has all led to here. Etching their name in history, your new Grand Finals champions, Virtus Pro!
Ever since Virtus Pro entered the Marvel Rivals space, they've been battling for superiority over the EMEA region, clashing with the likes of Citadel, Navi, and others. They earned that regional sovereignty with their Stage 2 victory and set their sights on world domination. To earn their Grand Finals championship, they defeated at least one team from every single region. And thanks to their efforts, EMEA secured both LAN tournament titles in the first year of Rivals Esports. Though this tournament wasn't without its problems, especially during the group stage before DreamHack began, this was truly a pilgrimage for Rivals Esports fans. To witness the very first tournament featuring a live crowd, meeting and interacting with the casters and teams who've been watching online for months, all while looking up in starry-eyed wonder as legends were born before our very eyes, it's a feeling that's difficult to truly describe. It's been quite the journey to get here, filled with trials and tribulations around every turn. But for Marvel Rivals Esports, we're only just getting started. Things will go dormant for a while, and no doubt we'll say goodbye to some teams and players, but there's still plenty more where that came from. Community tournaments are already gearing up or have already begun running, and now the players living in the Tier 2 ecosystem will start preparing to climb towards the next level. After having the opportunity to be there in person and experience this firsthand, I can tell you, wherever Rivals goes next, we'll be there. I've been Diatonic, you've been amazing, and I'll see you in-game.
To crown your finals MVP, it's Sparker!
That's my face right now.
We finished second, only got bested by VP, and honestly, those guys deserve it, man. All of them are crazy good players, right? All of them are hard workers.
A delay earlier, and oh god, it's America, man.
Hey Tetcher, hey Ryan. You know, America doesn't appear to be in the best spot at the current moment.
Doing alright. I kind of miss it. Crazy Raccoon a little bit. I don't know where NX went off to.
In the most stressful pendulum of numbers that I have ever seen.